So we continue our discussion now by looking at decimals and percents. How do we go between decimals and percents? And then how do we go the other way? Well, it turns out with decimals and percents, it's pretty straightforward. For example, consider the decimal 0.24. All we have to do to go from a decimal to a percent is to move the decimal point 2 places, always 2, to make it bigger. So we move it 2 places. I don't like to think left and right because there's a reason to mix up. But if I think make it bigger, then I'll keep track of it the right direction. So 0.24 is just 24%. Or as another example, consider the decimal 7.029. Again, we just moved the decimal point 2 places to make it bigger. And that would give me 702.9%. So we just need to remember to move it 2 places to make it bigger. That will allow us to convert from a decimal to a percent. When we go the other way, and we're going from a percent back over to a decimal, we just need to remember to move it 2 places to make it smaller. 2 places to make it smaller. So if we have a percentage like 32%, we just move the decimal point 2 places to make it smaller. So that's going to cause us to go to the left. And then we can just write out our decimal, 0.32. Or as another example, consider 2.5%. Again, move it 2 places to make it smaller. That will require adding in a 0 in front. And so then we have the decimal 0.025. So it's pretty straightforward to go from a decimal to a percent or a percent to a decimal. Now when we bring fractions into play, like if we want to convert a percent over to a fraction, there's actually 2 options. There are the ones like 47% that are really straightforward. We can just take that 47% and turn it into a decimal first by moving it 2 places to make it smaller, and then we take the decimal and turn it into a fraction. And so we get the answer 47 over 100, which does not reduce, and so that's our answer. However, if you're dealing with a percentage that's a mixed number, then going to a decimal, especially here with the 2/3, the decimal would be 0.6 repeating forever. That's a little bit harder, a little bit more frustrating to do as a decimal. So we're going to skip the decimal. But what we're going to realize is what we really did when we went from 47% to 0.47, moving it 2 places to make it smaller. What I really did is I divided by 100. So we can take the 25 and 2/3, and we can directly go to the fraction by dividing by 100. Now remember, you can't divide a mixed number unless we convert it to a fraction. So 25 times 3, 75 plus 2, makes that 77 over 3. Dividing by 100, we multiply by its reciprocal, we flip it. So we get times 1 over 100. And then we look to cancel, nothing cancels. So we go ahead and we multiply 77 over 300. That would be the fraction for 25 and 2/3. Okay, now going the other way, what if we have a fraction and we want to go to a percent? Well, just like the first example, some of these come very straightforward. Like if we have a decimal that stops, like 3/5. 3/5 we can write down by dividing and get 0.6. And then we can go to a percent by moving it 2 places to make it bigger. So 3/5 is 60%. However, if we have a decimal or a fraction that's going to actually be a repeating decimal, then again it's a little bit of trouble going in and dealing with the decimal form, so we skip it. To go from a percent to a fraction, we divide it by 100. So when we go the other way, from a fraction to a percent, we multiply by 100. And so in this case, we'd have 7 over 9 times 100 over 1 would give us 700 over 9. Then we just need to simplify that 700 over 9 so we have a nice answer as a percent. And we can do that by dividing. 9 goes into 700, so we're going to convert that improper fraction to a mixed number. 9 goes into 70, 7 times, which would be 63. Bring down to 0, that'll give us another 7. That takes us to the whole number part. That'll also be 63, which will give us a remainder of 7. And so as a mixed number, this will be 77 and 7 over 9 percent. Okay, so a little bit harder on some of these. You won't encounter too many of those. Most of them you'll be able to do the easier way, from percent to fraction or fraction to percent. You can just use the decimal as the go-between.